The M6C SOCOM Magnum, also known as the Automag, is a weapon that debuted in Halo 3 ODST. You can enjoy new visuals of the Automag in Blaster O Remix's Tacticool ODST mod. I've showcased this mod before, and I enjoy how the ODSTs are frenetic with the Automag, as displayed through the new animations. They will conduct a proper tactical reload for the Magnum, and to add in some visual flair, they'll even give the weapon a quick twirl. Each weapon has a new animation, but this mod certainly illustrates the ODST's familiarity with the Automag. Ultimately, this mod helps ODST to further stand apart from the other Halo games, as you are not using the same reload animations as the Master Chief. You could download this mod in the description below. As for the Automag itself, it's cool looking, but how practical is it really? What if you picked it up right now and tried to use it? And then consider the massive cartridge this thing holds. It fires 500 Magnum semi-armor piercing high explosives. Well, you could have fooled me. Playing this on Heroic, the difficulty Bungie says Halo's meant to be played on, this Automag kinda sucks.
Go get a scarab, you sissies!
But undoubtedly, the Automag is cool. It's here to stay. So I teamed up with Instructor LaSpina, head of Spear Training Group, and he put it into perspective of how large the cartridge really is that's supposed to be loaded into this Automag. This is a fun series me and him have created together, and LaSpina puts in a lot of effort into his videos. You can check out his channel in the description below. In our first video we created together, he altered the Halo 3 model of the standard Magnum. In the moment, he did not realize, in which some of you had commented about, that he made this standard Magnum look closer to the Automag in ODST. There are similarities, so that got me and Instructor LaSpina curious. What would he change with the Automag? Would it be worth it, or does the Automag make everything impractical about the standard Magnum actually practical? Well, no. The Automag is in fact the most contradicting weapon in the Halo series. Here's why.
All right, hey there, and welcome back again. Instructor LaSpina with Spear Training Group. We are going to be looking at the M6C SOCOM from the Halo universe, the suppressed Magnum pistol, more or less. This is kind of an interesting one here. Since the first video that we did on the assault rifle and the original Magnum, we did get some requests to take a look at this one, and there is a good bit here to take a look at and actually analyze. For those that are joining us for the first time, we'll quickly go over it. Video games are created to be cool and engaging and have good gameplay balance, so that's going to fall under rule of cool. From there, the writers will justify some of their cool designs by writing rule of lore, so they will write lore. If they have some firearms knowledge, they will lean it towards practicality, but still write lore to justify the design. What we're going to do today is take a look at practicality. So we're going to pull the rule of cool, the original design, look at the lore, but point it much harder at what is practical and realistic. Now, in doing so, we have a few different categories of things to look at. And a suppressed pistol, like this one here, is a particularly specialized weapon. You really do not see suppressed pistols too very often at all. So let's talk about that. Pistols are usually going to be in the compact category. They're going to be the most compact firearms that you can really carry. A suppressor takes away from that compact size, but ultimately still keeps it fairly small. To put these things into context, pistols are not meant to be necessarily your primary fighting weapon, and putting a suppressor on one means it is a very specialized weapon for a very specialized purpose. Oftentimes you will see this like in the Vietnam War. Some of the SOG operators would carry a well rod or some other suppressed pistols. They would call these things hush puppies. Some other suppressed pistols being like suppressed 22 pistols. And they were used to dispatch sentry dogs or tracking dogs for the most part. They could dispatch humans, but yeah, it's just worth noting the principle that they're in. There were rifle suppressors at the time, but because almost all the rifles in use during that era were breaking the sound barrier, that means they're getting a supersonic crack, which is actually very loud. Still, you can hear it a few hundred meters away. Suppressors are not movie quiet for the most part. If they are movie quiet, you are talking an insane focus on firearm suppression. Let's take a look at our description right away from good old Gunnery Sergeant Edward Buck. The M6S is whisper quiet with armor-piercing rounds. Brutes might see us coming, but the only thing they'll hear is their asses hitting the ground. This is really, really interesting kind of dialogue here. Whisper quiet means it is extremely specialized. Now, I know I'm looking at a M6C here. He references an M6S. I don't know if there's too much of a... Also known as the M6S. Okay, so there might be a slight naming convention there. But either way, if we're going to focus on something being quiet and it's going to be reported as whisper quiet, there not only is significant sound dampening technology within the suppressor itself, which is not unreasonable, but that's within the barrel length approximately, or so about right there. But that's within the barrel length. There needs to be significant sound compression and expansion qualities to the suppressor. But that also means the round cannot be supersonic. If it is supersonic, it's breaking the sound barrier, which creates a supersonic pop. These things are very loud. Like I said, you can hear them a couple hundred meters away. Why is that important? Well, the rounds are apparently also armor-piercing rounds. Well, one of the mainstays to something being armor-piercing is that it's going extremely fast and it's able to defeat armor because of its speed. So if it's going under the sound barrier and still remaining armor-piercing, that implies some really super speculative ammunition design. I see that we're also still using this high explosive round in this particular cartridge, but that defeats the purpose of a suppressed pistol. Because now I'm shooting something really quiet to stay undetected, but as soon as it hits something, not only is it making a big meaty smack, which people often kind of misinterpret a little bit, you have a big wet slap whenever the bullet hits, but now we have a secondary explosion that's going on. Again, this isn't our main fighting weapon. We're not shooting this to stay in a fight per se. We're shooting this to dispatch one or two off enemies so we can maneuver a little bit easier, right? Or get away or avoid contact. The biggest discrepancy that I'm seeing in all of our design here is the ammunition. And here is where I've got to own something a little bit. In the first video, I stated that this is more so in the 50 AE category. What I'd originally said is 12 by 7 by 40 millimeters is very closely indicative to a 50 AE because the overall length of 50 AE is right next to 40 millimeters, which is in our description over here. And I did that because I took the wrong measurements and I converted them incorrectly in the first video. That is on me. But this is also going to be a ding on the original design because we're talking a significant increasing issue here. The problem is metric measurements don't measure the same as standard measurements, and metric munition measurements only account for the case length. There is additional length on top of that. This is where I mistook the measurements. I saw case length here as 41, and I was kind of like, well, that's incorrect. But if we look at overall length, this is actually 58 millimeters. Now, whenever I do a pixel to millimeter conversion on all of these items that I'm looking at, I generally want to make sure that they did the correct dimensions for the magazines and all of the things that they're saying. And in the case of the M6C SOCOM here, they did in fact do all of the correct measurements. These measurements line up to having 12 rounds in the magazines. These measurements add up to being the proper length that they should be. And it all looks pretty solid there as far as measurements go. Problem is, 50 AE is an incredibly big round. This is such a specialized round that you really only see it on one legitimate frontier in our real world right now. And that is as a bear hunting round or a bear self-defense round. To put all of this into context, this is in the same chambering almost exactly as the description that we're looking at here. Now, yes, you can get this shorter to make it analogous to the M6C that we're seeing here. Let's take a look at the bullet. Now, in this particular case, I'm using snap caps just to remain all safe. Yeah, that is what this pistol is chambered in. Okay, let me put that in comparison. This is a 9mm. This is the most common service caliber currently in use here in the United States. This is what people trust their life with. And this is what this gun is chambered in. Now, it also states that the M6C has 12 of these. Here are 12 rounds taped together. Mind you, I don't have small hands. There it is. This is a Glock 17. This is a full-size handgun. My entire hand takes up the entirety of this grip here, as you can see. Okay? This is longer than that grip. This is significantly more unwieldy. Not only is it that, I can barely get my hand around this entire thing without any material from the pistol grip itself that's in play. Also, to put that into context, 12 rounds of 500, 19 rounds of 9mm. Okay, this is a substantial cartridge. So, you see that this is already very hard to get a hold of. Then we're adding extra material because we have to house that magazine, extra material on both sides to encase the magazine. That means your fingers and hand is even further spread apart than what I just showed you. And one of the critical components to being able to control recoil is by having a good solid grip. We are shooting a ridiculously powerful cartridge in a semi-automatic platform where this slide, mind you, is going to bounce all the way back in our hand, and it's going to induce a huge amount of recoil. This is bad juju. There were some original statements that said this gun was originally designed for Spartan use only, but we literally see this as a default loadout in ODST as one of the first weapons that the ODST are actually carrying. And we even see here, particularly used by ODST. So there have to be substantial changes in technology and material sciences to make this function the way that is being said. And considering the other weapons that we have in the universe, that would be a little bit of a incongruency, inconsistency with the tech, because there would be, if that existed, there would be incredible changes across the board with all of the other weapons as well. See, we have 4 times magnification, which here we see another lore incongruency a bit. This is where lore justifies the design, as we spoke about a minute ago. Because on the first Magnum, it was stated that that little smart link up top was the scope, right? Well, it doesn't exist here, but we do have 4 times magnification. So this is one of those things where lore kind of was used to justify a design. Let's take a look at what else. We know that we have a laser aiming module and a flashlight mounted underneath the weapon, which right there you do. There is a bit of a gap between here. I would like to have that closed up. For example, if there's a larger gap between any under barrel items, that means I have to reach even further forward to get it. I got to break my grip to be able to hit those buttons, or I have to use my offhand to come forward and hit those buttons. Because right now, I can just activate a light just like that. So you want to choke up your laser aiming modules and lights a little bit closer. We do have some visible lighting on here as well. Considering this is a quiet, sneaky weapon, we would want to reduce that a little bit. Our trigger shoe, just like the original, is pretty aggressive here. We're going to choke that up. I absolutely hate these knuckle guards. This is it's bad. One of the justifications is oh, you have big gloves. Okay, well, if I assume that there's a piece of metal linking from the front of my trigger guard here to the bottom of my grip. It's going to be a lot harder to get a big meaty hand in there because now I have extra material that's locking it up and bridging that gap. If I completely remove that material, I can come into this grip at any direction that I want. So we're going to reduce that. Yes, there are times and places where that existed in history, but you often see that phased out within the second and third generation because of that reason. It just gets in the way of things. On our magazine, we do see that it's extended quite a bit. That becomes a bit of a snag hazard, especially when the weapon's holstered on your leg. I've experienced this myself using leg drop holsters. A pistol on a leg drop holster is already cumbersome. You start adding on extra magazine extensions and stuff, that makes it even worse to carry, a lot harder to carry. Suppressors, they function off of allowing your gases to expand and rapidly cool. A cut into the slide like this is going to reduce the amount of room within the suppressor, further reducing the effectiveness of that suppressor. So we would want to ideally maximize on that surface area within. So we are going to reduce this little inlet to try to allow maximum suppression. It does state that we also have a compensator at the end of the suppressor. It's not common, but you do see it sometimes where that is the case. However, I'm assuming this is the compensator they're referencing. It's a little far back. We're going to push it forward just a little bit to give an extra half inch or so of gas expansion to get a little bit more suppression on that weapon. Our sighting system, we do actually have iron sights in play at this time, which cool. I'm a fan of it. I am going to add a little bit of modification on there. Not too much. Our controls, it has all the controls it needs with the exception of a magazine release. Now it's possible we have a magazine release underneath here, but that would be a heel magazine release. But in animations, we see that it just kind of drops free. So it doesn't require hitting a heel release at all. So I'm actually going to add one of those. I am going to reduce this if it wasn't said already. And one of the other areas I'm going to reduce, I don't think I did it on the first video, is this rear portion here. Reason being, whenever you go to grab a holstered pistol, oftentimes you sweep your hand over and then down into the grip. With this large bulk on the back, that means it's going to get in the way. Now, if this is chambered in 500 Magnum, that is maybe necessary to slow down the slide a little bit. Maybe there's some delaying mechanisms in there. Unfortunately, I'm going to assume that we're going to tame this caliber down to at least 50 AE, Action Express, which still is a ridiculously powerful cartridge, but at least it's realistic. It's somewhat more manageable than 500 Magnum.
You can see here Instructor LaSpina dispensing 500 Magnum, the same cartridge from the Automag. Notice the large amount of recoil, and then imagine, instead of standing in place, you put yourself into the world of Halo, ducking in and out of cover, firing from cover, while dodging plasma bolts and grenades.
So, there is what we're going to be looking at overall. We already went over on that barrel, actually. You're really only getting a few inches of barrel before the gases start to expand, even on integrally suppressed guns. Oftentimes, integrally suppressed, they'll have holes in porting early on in the barrel that allow the gases to escape. So you're losing a bit of velocity using these type of weapons. That's the nature of it. Remember, our role is to be quiet with this weapon. Apparently whisper quiet with this weapon. Magazine went over. Charging handle. Yeah, this little weird bulk at the back. Again, I'm assuming it's there to add mass to the slide to slow it down a little bit. Modern shooting technique doesn't really have us grabbing the back of slides anymore. We still do it, but in a different way. So this is kind of a relic of an old technique that used to be used whenever the first Halo and those designs came out. So it was an interpretation thing. Our grip, we are gonna slice up this grip a little bit. Looks a little angular here. Maybe just our limitations with polygons and stuff. No stock to worry about. Ergonomics, we've already talked about. Sighting, we got sighting in play. So let's take a look at the updated version. Here is our original version with all of the regular complaints. And there is our updated version. It looks a lot more Desert Eagle-y. So obviously, our main goal here is to lean more into the role of the pistol. It is meant to be compact. It is meant to be able to stow away and use to dispatch sentries. This is not our primary fighting implement. It's just there to get bad guys out of the way real quick. So let's start from our suppressor side here. You can see that we added a little bit of a dot to that front sight post, make it a little bit more visible in low light situations. We moved our porting a little bit more forward. Also added a little bit of shadow and context to it to make it look a little more authentic. Because this just looks flat. This actually looks like it might be ported. We reduced that bulk that we had before in our slide. Down below, we pulled our laser aiming module and light system rearward just a little bit so we can actually reach these controls with a firing grip. Our trigger has been reduced a bit, still mostly in the same place. One of the interesting things about this, if this trigger gets pulled directly into the slide or into the frame and it looks like it's centered into this frame, that means this trigger mount, this bar here, this mass is actually going to be touching our bullet tips. You can kind of see this on like some 1911 models, or pretty much all 1911. I don't have 1911 around here. 1911s do a similar thing with some of their triggers. Depending on how far this trigger travels really depends on whether or not that's efficient. For example, if this is only coming back this far, then it's only pushing back into the grip that far, and that's probably going to be okay. So it depends on how far that trigger moves. I didn't change it here. Did add on a magazine release, and I reduced our trigger guard here a bit to make it more usable while still leaving enough room for big old sausage chief fingers. Our magazine has been pulled into the mag well a bit more to reduce some of that bulk. Again, specialized weapon, not main fighting weapon. According to the math on how much that extension would add with springs and stuff, that's going to mean this magazine is probably going to be sitting around 8 to 9 rounds of ammunition. Really, in a fighting handgun or a sidearm like this, we've learned that you want more ammunition on tap. That's part of why we went to 9mm to begin with. More shots available is more effective than a singular powerful shot in most cases. Now, under the context of dealing with Covenant, this might be something they had reasonably done, which I can't argue that point too much because that would potentially be realistic. 500 Magnum is insanely big. This is a crazy powerful cartridge. Choked up our rear grip here a little bit to get more control on that weapon. We lowered the safety bar to get out of the way of the slide mechanism. And we just reduced that overall mass just a little bit, pulling it forward. There's still a lot of hangover here. Most semi-automatic pistols, their grip would literally end right there. But again, larger caliber, we're going to assume it's necessary. And we also added on a slight change to the iron sight here, because having a large rear sight like this, it's okay. But I'm going to assume there's finer control of our sights within that. So you see that sometimes in targeting sights for pistols. Considering the importance of sending a very well-placed suppressed pistol shot, I would assume that we have nicer sights on this suppressed pistol than what we originally see in the model. So overall, not dramatic changes, but pretty significant changes. Really, the biggest discrepancy here is the ammunition that's claimed to be in there and the fact that it's claimed to be whisper quiet. Remember, whenever you pull this trigger, it's not just the gunshot that's making sound. This slide has to come all the way back and all the way forward, slamming closed on a loaded chamber. It's louder than a whisper. The only other thing I want to touch on, and I haven't really done much on it, is the fact that we have a consideration for infrared laser systems. Infrared laser systems are a legit thing, and it would make a huge amount of sense if more guns in the Halo universe had it. We see all types of things about neural links and optical links and all these smart scope technologies and stuff for computer tracking. It's a lot easier to manufacture an infrared laser system and a computer that can detect infrared lasers than it is to probably, do brain surgery on people. It would make sense more so that there would be a heads-up display that is sensitive to infrared laser systems and can compute that into readable information that we see in game with a floating reticle. We've already had infrared lasers for a very long time, and they're really awesome under night vision and stuff. And even if you don't have night vision, there are systems that can still pick it up regardless. So it would be more consistent to have these IR lasers on more weapons as opposed to trying to justify it with neural link technology and stuff like that. The feasibility of the technology and ease of use is just already existent. With that said, that could be an area for a lore writer to justify. Why are we doing Neuralink? Well, we do it because it's much safer, much more affordable. We have the technology that can do it really quickly and less invasively. That's what's assumed. But that assumes also that it's easier than just digitally reading where an infrared laser is. Anywho, that's all I have for the M6C pistol. I do enjoy this. This actually looks like a pretty comfortable pistol. And it does appear that this suppressor could pop off and leaving our old barrel or one of the other pistol variations that we see in game, which is a nice touch. I like that idea. Be interesting if you had the ability to just carry one of those around and snap it on when needed, just like how pistol suppressors are theoretically actually used. Anyway, that's all I have for the M6C. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you, Coyote, for your awesome opportunity and awesome editing skills on this stuff. And thank you to his awesome community for having me do some of these. These are quite a bit of fun. Learned a lot doing them, and I look forward to doing some more. We have some interesting ones that come up. Let's see how those go. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for watching, and thank you, Instructor LaSpina, for taking the time to recreate the Automag. If you like this series and you still need to see all the other videos, you can go ahead and click on our playlist as seen on screen, or you can check out all of my other videos that I've made, and consider subscribing as it helps me out a lot. Thank you, and happy Halloween.